Hello, my name is Carol Skenes, and I'm the Chief of Staff at Turquoise Health and also the author of today's blog. The blog focuses on AI uses within payer and provider contracting, and part of why I wanted to write the blog is because there's just generally been a lot of buzz around how AI can help automate manual or antiquated processes. That is not specific to healthcare administrative practices either. I don't think I go 20 minutes in my day without seeing something online or hearing somebody say something like, I wonder if AI can make this easier. Or, what did ChatGPT suggest? What we've found, though, and I'm sure you have found as well if you've done any work with AI, is that there's a lot of nuance and context, both in the answers, but specifically with what we're talking about today on the blog, with contract terms or price transparency rate data that from the Turquoise perspective also requires human subject matter expertise to help QA the results and also generally improve AI functionality. I wanted to walk through a few specific sections of today's blog and highlight both some of the concepts that we're talking about and also maybe go into a little more detail on why we thought these were important and kind of what our view is in addition to what we have laid out in the blog. So let's jump right into it. First things first, if you've read the blog, then you'll know we start with an assessment of the fact that typically one subject matter expert is known as contract management within an organization. We hear that countless times talking to customers, to stakeholders in the industry, and even some of our own Turquoise team members previously worked in managed care. And it does remind me a lot of the character Janet from The Good Place. I read a lot of this and wrote a lot of this in Janet's voice, which if you haven't seen The Good Place, is sort of half robot, half friendly, helpful friend. And so, yeah, read this out loud in Janet's voice if you like. But the concept of Janet, which is that she kind of pops up as needed and has a specific answer to a very specific question, or can synthesize a bunch of information and just give you the specifics of what you need. That encyclopedia level of knowledge is really what a lot of subject matter experts who understand not just the current contract terms, but also the history of the contracts, when they were first signed, how often they renew, what's changed over the years. All of that is housed in this healthcare version of a Janet, which Janet has been mission critical for a lot of managed care organizations, for over a decade. So what that means is sometimes folks like Janet end up with a monopoly on their time. It's basically information dissemination rather than focusing on high caliber execution. And from our perspective, when we think about AI as its ability to be information dissemination within a managed care org, we don't take that one step further and say that means the people with contracting knowledge should become obsolete or that they already are obsolete. I think it means it unlocks their time to work on bigger and better projects. We also think they need to be focused on helping do quality assurance on the AI and sort of help it be the best product it can be. We'll get into more details on that in a minute. So we're focusing specifically on the actual contract, the signed contract between a healthcare provider and an insurance company or a payer. And if you've never seen any of these contracts, then the process, like many other business processes, is partially dictated by legally binding contracts that outline the relationship, responsibilities, and rights of the involved parties. And these contracts typically specify how a provider or providers will participate in a payer network, and they talk through the contractual relationship, however far back that goes. And typically it's been, years, perhaps over a decade. And what that leads is a long and meandering paper trail that is mostly electronic, though still sometimes actually paper. I've seen within an electronic contract management system, paper versions of contracts with actual handwriting in the margins that have just been scanned in. And it just shows how complex of a process it is to chronicle all these month over month, year over year changes in that payer and provider relationship. It could be adding or removing health plans, different providers coming and going, adding different services, buying new equipment that would require new contracted rates. All of these nuanced variables factor into reimbursement calculations and red lines, contract terms, and all of that is somewhere, either in a shared drive, on someone's desktop file folder, or even sometimes in physical filing cabinets, often some combination of all of those. And that's where someone like a Janet, a contracting subject matter expert, comes on the scene. They just seem to know all of this information off the top of their head. And because of that, they are brought in to answer a quick question, or they're brought in to just pull a file that the team knows, that person knows where it is. And all of that kind of work is where we think AI can make the biggest process improvement. But it's not just AI that we view as a solution to helping organize and synthesize all of the various elements of the paper trail that comes with these contracts. It's specifically thoughtful AI. We've all seen instances, often humorous, but sometimes, in our real world day-to-day work environments, where AI gives a solution that is missing context, or it is hallucinating and looking at the wrong source material. All of that points to the fact that we need these subject matter expertise. We need these subject matter experts, rather, to be working alongside the development of the AI to know that the information that's actually getting disseminated is accurate. And that allows the subject matter experts to move on to these bigger projects. Part of what it looks like to bring an AI solution into this foundational contracting work is bringing in some process to digitize all these different paper or file folder type documents. A lot of larger hospitals or health systems and payers are already well underway, or perhaps they've already completed this, but every digital filing cabinet has its own rules and regulations for file folder organization. What does it mean to add a new document? And some organizations have a pretty clearly defined process for doing this, and others don't. But even in the best, most organized way, the results typically are a pretty tangled web that include inconsistent file names, folders, and product lines. So there's no one single agreed upon way to sort these contracts. It's not always alphabetically, it's not by page count. They are complex, and the data points within them that are relevant to subject matter experts, revenue cycle teams, managed care teams, matter in a way that ideally we can sort them into metadata, which is just the data about the data in a more concise way. A table of contents, adding context, a too long didn't read type info within the larger data set. And so that's what we think about in terms of creating some sort of a digitized metadata experience, where you can look at different dynamic matrices that show relevant data points across a number of different contracts. In this digitized metadata world, we think about layering in the fact that anyone then with the right permissions or appropriate access can filter by payer name or document type or effective date, any number of filters, and immediately see the relevant information. This ideally up-levels the status quo, which is opening 7 scattered contract documents, filtering 3 different columns across a handful of different Excel files, needing your second monitor, needing your third monitor, just to kind of create a massive ecosystem to pull a few relevant data points. The idea of digitized metadata simplifies all of that. It also helps flag any conflicting contract data reports, helps you organize and standardize naming file conventions. And all of this just creates exponential opportunities for a more efficient workflow and a more efficient use of your workforce time. And a lot of this is built on the fact that contracts in general are, by nature, pretty low tech and unsophisticated, particularly when we're talking about contracts that have existed for years prior to AI being a potential solution for organization. Even though they're low tech and unsophisticated, the reality is the information within the contracts is a massively strategic asset. And we need to understand it and appreciate the best way to optimize it and know how to leverage knowledge at scale. And because the information in these contracts is such a highly strategic asset across a number of stakeholders in healthcare, we think that the investment in resources and technology to create a more efficient transaction, relies heavily on the ability to succinctly and accurately access the key data points that are housed within contracts. And the rates of these contracts are also the core of machine readable files within the broader price transparency ecosystem. So the longer we get in this world of understanding price transparency and how contracts play in, it becomes pretty clear to us that the actual contracts and the price transparency data themselves are inextricably linked. And so if we're truly trying to eliminate the financial complexity of healthcare, we need both clear, organized data within the price transparency ecosystem and a better contracting experience for those looking at the additional terms separate from the actual negotiated rates, be it appeal limits, billing limits, and anything along those lines. Hopefully you found some of that information helpful or thought-provoking, or at the minimum, you binged a couple episodes of The Good Place and thought about eating some shrimp cocktail. If you're curious to learn more about what Turquoise is doing to help improve thoughtful AI experiences within contracting, feel free to reach out, and we look forward to talking with you.